Hello and welcome to The Rewind, where we dive into the making and legacy of various films from cult classics to award-winning masterpieces. Today's film is a sentimental favorite, Silver Bullet, released in 1985. I think it's October 11th, so it's like a 40-year anniversary now of this movie. It's based on the Stephen King novella, Cycle of the Werewolf. We'll get into more of that a little later. It centers on the residents of the fictional town Tarker's Mills, and the film follows a 10-year-old paraplegic boy named Marty, played by Corey Haim, and his older sister, Jane, played by Megan Follows. And their town is haunted by a series of gruesome killings that point to the possibility of a werewolf. So it's up to these two. I think at first kind of fighting the brother and sister, but later become kind of a bit of a cloak and dagger, kind of like Nancy Drew kind of thing happening. They hunt down who the werewolf is with the help of their Uncle Red, played by Gary Busey. It's a very entertaining movie, one that holds a very special place in my heart. And here to talk about today is Paul Shirey, entertainment journalist, accomplished artist. You can check out his work over at the Arctic Ninja Substack. Also, check out his podcast, Midman, which I highly recommend people to listen to. I listen to it quite frequently and I quite like it. I know this week's episode, you and the co-host are talking about the top favorite songs that you guys grew up listening to. So that's one I'm going to have to listen to because I've got plenty of my own favorite songs that I listen to on a constant loop. So Paul Shirey, thank you very much for talking Silver Bullet with me today.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I hope you have a good listen on the podcast. It was actually a blast putting it together and doing a top 100 best songs. And the rule is too for that is that you have to choose without judgment. Meaning, if Backstreet Boys belongs on that list and you love Backstreet Boys, it belongs on that list. So you can't, if you try to fake it, then you've already failed. So that really is the fun of it. So I hope you discover it, and anybody else that listens to it discovers that too. But yeah, happy to be here. And Silver Bullet happens to be my favorite horror film of all time.
Hmm.
So happy to talk about it.
So the first time I watched this film, it was quite late. I think I was maybe around, I don't know, 17, 18 years old. And what was interesting about this movie is that I don't know if you know much about my family background in any context. My older sister, who passed away this past January, she had a bad car accident back in the early 90s, and she was paraplegic as well. So she had bad severe physical and mental disabilities. So when that happens to a family, you kind of attune your senses to the world about how things work for people who are placed in that kind of predicament and their families as well. And I never really saw
Right.
that in movies or TV shows. So here I am late at night watching, just TV or whatever, flipping over, and there's Corey Haim go. Oh, I know Corey Haim, and he's playing the
Yeah.
paraplegic kid. And I was like, I've never seen this movie before. It is very rare to watch a character like that depicted in such a way in a movie that not only is the lead, but it doesn't come across as kind of like a sad sap kind of story thing. It's very much kind of like very much the protagonist is very much, active and such. And to me, it was just such an amazing thing to watch that film. And so, rewatching it again recently for this podcast kind of affirmed a lot of those feelings I had for that character, for that movie. And it also stands up, I think as a great movie as well. Kind of like in the context of those kind of like 1980s kids on the bench and movies mixed in with this horror story, kind of like the Boy Cried Wolf kind of
Yeah.
thrown in there as well. So yeah, it was a blast to watch it again and took me back to watching it the first time. What about yourself, Paul? Do you remember the first time you watched Silver Bullet?
So I watched it. I don't remember specifically, but I know that I watched it with my dad and my brother, and I just remember it scaring the shit out of me. I was so
Mm,
frightened. I think, well, I thought the werewolf then looked like super scary, and I just rewatched it this past week in preparation for this, and I still think that the werewolf effects are outstanding, especially for 1985. You don't really get practical werewolf effects anymore. Those days are kind of done now, and that is honestly a tragedy. I feel like there's a lot lost, when you start doing CGI with the creatures, you just don't feel that same impact.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, I just for me, it felt. I'll tell you what really hooked me with Silver Bullet was that it felt real,
yeah,
and by that I mean the entire scenario, like this small town, everybody felt like real, like everyday people, especially in kind of like a American East Coast, Midwest kind of setting. And I think that's what really made it scary was because you could see yourself in that place, like in this small town, and all of a sudden there's this evil that shows up, and I think that, the way that they portray it, the way that unfolds is so genuine. And that is what I think what made it that much scarier to me. Because by all accounts, I don't think that Silver Bullet is like necessarily it's not a traditional scary movie like, say, The Exorcist, right? Or
Mm.
something along those lines. But as a story about, you know, evil just kind of showing up and not having, any understanding of what that might be because you're in such like a closed environment. I just found that great. And to your point about Marty, Corey Haim's character being a paraplegic, I always thought that that was like such a cool like angle to the story, because you don't see that frequently, right? And it does put him at a disadvantage, but it also puts him at an advantage. Specifically in the middle of the film when he's letting off the fireworks by the bridge. If he was an able-bodied person and had gone out there by himself and walked, he would be dead. So I found that an interesting thing where it was actually his disability that saved him initially. So I think that is just a really cool angle. And I like that while they show that that is part of his life and it's nothing that's ever going to change, there wasn't any false hope like, oh, hey, maybe you'll walk again one day. This was just his life. And instead of them trying to like give him false hope, they're like, hey, how can we make your life better?
Yeah,
And that's like where Uncle Al comes in, Gary Busey's character, and makes him the motorized silver bullet, which I just think is. I always thought that was so cool as a kid.
yeah,
Like as a kid watching Silver Bullet, you're like, I want a silver bullet, But it's like, who wants like? I don't think anybody in their right mind is like, hey, I want to be paraplegic, but at the same time, they made it cool, and I think that's pretty amazing that you can do that, for a character. So I really like that aspect, and I like too that they don't shy away from him lamenting
mm,
his disability. The part where he's watching the kids play baseball, and everybody's friendly to him. Nobody's like teasing him or giving him any guff over his disability, but you could see like where he's still, he's watching the kids run and play baseball and, wishing could be a part of that, and they're like, oh, hey, Marty, are you going to stick around? He's like, no, I'm going to go home. I'm going to take off. And you see him always trying to be a part of that. The same thing with the kid flying the kite. And he's like, he wants to be a part of that too.
yeah.
I think it's a cool dynamic that you just don't get, and I think it gives it a lot of layers to the protagonist that you don't typically get.
The origins of this movie is really interesting. A big name that has to be talked about first is a producer named Dino De Laurentiis, who, especially
Nope.
during the 80s and early 90s, was just like a big kind of like name producer for a lot of genre movies.
Yep.
And Stephen King movies, especially, he really kind of hooked onto in the early 80s. So Silver Bullet was, from what I understand, the 10th screen adaptation of a King novel, but it was the fourth one I think that De Laurentiis worked on because he did Dead Zone, he did Firestarter, Cat's Eye, and then came Silver Bullet. And he loved Stephen King so much that he even produced Maximum Overdrive, which was like now notoriously known as Stephen King's lone directorial effort because it was just so like I haven't seen it myself. It's something I would do want to check out. But a lot of people didn't like that film, including King himself by all
Oh, you've
means.
never seen Maximum Overdrive?
No, I haven't seen
Oh
it.
my
No.
God, I love Maximum Overdrive. I am an apologist for that. We watch. I mean, it's similar to Silver Bullet and all those movies you just mentioned that kind of make up this to me. I think are the best of Stephen King's early adaptations, notwithstanding Carrie, and then later on with Misery.
Mm,
But what a just fun, like I love Firestarter. I love that Tangerine Dream score in Firestarter is that makes the movie itself. But I loved the Dino era of Stephen King, and I feel like those movies really they don't only not only do they capture King's work, but they capture the era, the
mm.
80s era of filmmaking and horror filmmaking, and I love that. And I highly recommend to you and everybody to watch Maximum Overdrive if you've never seen it. It is so much fun. It's so like, what's the right way? Like as a kid watching it, it was like shocking, like not super gory, but enough that it was like there was still a lot of shocks throughout. And the Green Goblin truck semi is just amazing. I love it. I love Maximum Overdrive. It's so good.
So this movie, you talk about a novella, Cycle of the Werewolf. Originally, the it was supposed to be a calendar. So a publisher had this idea to make a calendar where each month would talk about a new werewolf killed. So they had this artist named Bernie Wrightson who was going to
Bernie
illustrate,
Wrightson.
And King was going to write the brief descriptions of the slaughter. There we go. And
Yeah.
so instead, King's like, look, I can't. This is too brief. It's not for me. Let's do a novella instead, which you just showed right now. And so, are the illustrations by Bernie still in that book there? Do they
Yeah.
still show it?
So it has the illustrations, and these are
Nice.
the color. So it has the black and white, but then it also has the color illustrations as well. So um and they are like Bernie Wrightson is a classic comic book artist and one of the greats. These are and they're they capture so much of
Mm,
the well, I want to say the movie. I was going to say the novella, but the book and the movie. Like here's the church sequence
yeah.
where he has the dream and all of that. And so I've always had a fascination with werewolves.
Yeah. Me too.
And really just all of this. Like here's
Mm.
the fireworks scene. So yeah, this is great. And it's very thin volume. I also have this one, which has the novella inside of it, but then it also has King's screenplay
Oh,
as
okay.
well. So it's a double whammy. I remember I saw it at like a bargain bin. I was like, what? I was like, I gotta have this. Like this is amazing. So yeah, you could read the script and you could kind of compare it to the novella, which is really cool. But yeah, Bernie Wrightson, he did something similar with Frankenstein, with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, and oh my God, the work is so beautiful. And he's done everything from Batman the Cult. He's done Swamp Thing, like so many different comics. Just such an accomplished, brilliant artist, especially in the art community. He's so well respected. Rest in peace. He's been dead for quite a while now, but just so amazing. And what a treat to have that as part of any work. You know what I'm saying? Like that really was a huge sell to me. And I love looking at the novella and just looking at the images. You have the movie to go along with it now, but if you think like, man, if you haven't seen the movie or before the movie even came out, you have those images that's just enough of a tease, for the chapter to kind of be like, wow, it's like you get a snapshot in that. And I love that with any type of work, written work. And I'm actually going to be doing it for my book, which is somewhat inspired by Silver Bullet in that it is a not a werewolf story, but it's a werewolf story but with sharks instead of
Right.
wolves. And that is what I'm going to do is I'm going to have images at the head of each chapter, similar to like Harry Potter or any of those other books. But I feel like Silver Bullet, I don't think it's the first one to ever do that, but it's so effective and it really evokes the imagery, or the movie rather evokes the imagery quite well in adapting it. It's not perfect, it's not dead on, but it's still enough that you're like, wow, that's really really cool. So it's nice to have that connection with the film and the book visually.
And clearly, De Laurentiis was a fan of what he saw there. He's in the Stephen King business. He decides to option the book. So, first director attached to the movie was actually Don Coscarelli, who a lot of people know for Phantasm and such. He had worked with De Laurentiis. He did the Beastmaster for him, the 1984 movie. He's talked about, get great De Laurentiis 1980s, the films. Beastmaster is one right there. So, and
Oh,
so he comes on. At that time, Stephen King hadn't done the screenplay adaptation. So Coscarelli takes a shot at it, and there's a lot of problems. He actually meets Stephen King. He says the meeting was awesome. Stephen King's a great guy, but there was just too many things going on, and so he moves on. And then Dan Attias comes in. This is his first and only movie, like as a feature film. Post this movie, he's done TV. Like he's like a guy
tons of TV.
engrossed in
Yeah.
TV. Everything from Sopranos to It's Sunny in Philadelphia and anything in between. He's you name it, The Wire. He's been a part of it. But this
Yeah.
was his first movie. He was a second AD for Spielberg on ET. He worked also as an AD on Twilight Zone, the movie. So this was like his first kind of big movie thing. And his whole thing about the movie is like he wanted to really tap into the thematic kind of thing of it. And he talked about how every character in this movie, bar one, has some type of wound to them, some type of disability to them. So he talks about how the sister of Jane, like her wound is like her ego and pride. She's constantly being kind of like second place in in her parents' eyes to compare to like Marty, who is given, of course, preferential treatment because of his disability. The Reverend himself, Attias talks about how he sees the Reverend as like someone who's constantly battling with like the how he's unable to be kind of pure in his thoughts and everything that kind of brings out kind of like a monster within. Uncle Red, he's an alcoholic in the movie. That's another kind of wound. And the one person who doesn't struggle with it is Marty because he accepts what he is and how he is. And the one time where he kind of gives in and kind of feels sorry for himself is the scene that you were kind of talking about before, which was the baseball
Yeah,
scene.
yeah.
And at that time, that's when the Reverend kind of creeps up in the car, not to
Right.
give away too much here, but kind of leaves him exposed to danger. So the one time he kind of lets down his guard and feels sorry for himself, that's where he finds real danger. And I found it really interesting how everyone's got their own kind of like, I guess you could say their own kind of demons or their own kind of what can I say? He says wounds. I guess you could say demons, but I think like their shortcomings they kind of deal with, whether it be an addiction or ego or whatever. But Marty's the one who kind of like is more assured than anyone else in the movie. I thought that was a pretty cool kind of approach. It's a philosophical and thematic approach to take to the material.
Yeah, yeah. And the victims were similar too, like the one female who is pregnant, and she's starts, considers committing suicide.
Mm,
Um, and that's when the werewolf comes in and ends up killing her. I can't remember in the novella if it's like he actually rapes her first or not. I can't remember. I just remember I felt like it was harsher in the novella than in the book or in the movie. But yeah, I felt like, a lot of the victims, they were like either alcoholics, they were abusive, it seems like, then there was the sheriff who I don't know that he had as prominent of a curse or whatever, or an impediment, but maybe it was the fact that he was just kind of clueless
yeah,
as to
yeah,
what was. I mean, he started once he finally got clued in, that was it for him. But it was interesting to watch him deal with he's dealing with the townsfolk, he's dealing with Marty, he's dealing with everybody, and then by the end it's you know he's unraveled it,
yeah.
but
And the
not.
thing is, as well, it's like it's a small town, right? So they wouldn't have to at all deal with anything like that. I'm sure the only thing
Yeah.
he would have to deal with is maybe
They don't have a
drunkenness
werewolf
or
SWAT team
no,
ready.
no, not at all. No.
Hi guys, Matt here from Matt's Movie Reviews, letting you know that the Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel has launched channel membership. This provides exclusive videos and other cool stuff as well for all channel members. It's under one tier, one price, and with that one price you get exclusive reviews. For example, I'll be going through the American Film Institute's top 100 movies, so every week I'll do a new review based on that movie list. You can get exclusive reviews based on your request. Request a movie review and I will review it for you. You'll also get exclusive content for behind the scenes stuff as well. You also get exclusive interviews that I haven't posted yet as part of my podcast, like older interviews with Academy Award winners and other great filmmakers and actors as well, and a bunch of other cool stuff as well. I hope you can all join up, be part of this great experience I have an offer for you. Support indie content creators, support a movie critic like myself who is trying to make it through the content creator space. Matt's Movie Reviews YouTube channel memberships. Please join and get some great exclusive content.
Speaking of the werewolf SWAT team, this cast here is quite good. We talked about Corey Haim, plays the part of Marty. So again, well, I was saying off air to you though, I find it kind of hard sometimes to find information about some of the actors in the film because either they don't talk about it or people didn't talk about it much. Some stuff I did find with Corey Haim was interesting though. So the director Daniel Attias talked about how they looked all around the US to try to find this kid. And ended up finding like an actor from Canada. Like Corey Haim is like a Toronto native, I think. And the way he found it, there was a movie called Firstborn that Michael Apted directed, and it had Peter Weller in it.
Yeah.
Supposedly, there's a story from that film where Peter Weller supposedly got like physically like abusive towards Corey Haim during the movie because he's all method. So he's like a guy who's like beats up on kids, and so when Corey Haim kind of approaching like Peter Weller threw Corey Haim against a wall or some shit like that, which is just fucking insane when you think about it. But anyway, they cast him in the film, and by all accounts, he's just was fantastic to work with. And the bond between him and Gary Busey, especially, was very strong throughout the movie. And I found this really cool quote by Jake Busey, which is Gary Busey's son, who was this around the same age as Corey when they were filming the movie, and they were hanging out all the time. He says like Corey was 6 months younger than me. He was a visitor, and Corey was an employee, but they were both kids, so they became friends, and they went off fishing, and they went, well, had all this kind of good stuff going on. So, by the sounds of it, he was just having like a blast in this movie. I think it was like only his second and third film. And watching the film, you can see like this kid's like a star, and he will become a star like in the '80s and such with other movies as well. But at the same time, and the director Dan Attias, whenever he talks about the film, he looks back at it with fondness, but at the same time with a lot of sense of sadness because it's just like how Corey kind of like just unraveled by the end of his life to all his addictions and everything, and to die at such a young age as well. It's a sad thing to watch as well because he was just such a charming young actor, and it was just it's a bummer that what happened later on, but it's cool as well to watch him in a movie like this, being so young, and to pull off like essentially he's the lead in this movie. This Stephen King kind of like adaptation. I think it's fantastic in the film.
And he holds it, he holds the role quite well, for a young actor, and that's so hard.
Yeah,
For any time you're getting a kid actor in a role like that they have to carry the movie, it's a risk, it's a gamble. You just hope you have the right person that's gonna be able to pull it off. And again, I think it goes back to what I was saying earlier about how everything felt real. Haim's performance felt real. It felt genuine. Never was a moment where I was like taken out. And I feel like, man, I think that's where the tragedy of, his demise really factors in because he was so talented.
yeah,
He really was like this affable kid, all the way up into his teen years. You were just like licensed to drive. Like, he was like mischievous, but you just loved this kid. He was great. And I loved his vulnerability in Silver Bullet. I love, again, like the scene where he's watching the kids play baseball and feeling sorry for himself. That's a great point that you brought up too, is, about how that's the moment where he kind of lets his guard down, and that's the moment that he pays for it as a result. Well, almost pays for it, but it's just a real show of his skill back then. And it's, you think about like the drugs and the alcohol and the pressure, and everything that comes with, becoming a Hollywood star and how much gets lost in that process when you start young. And that's just the real tragedy of Corey Haim. But, you know, thankfully there is still a record of the potential that he had. And I think Silver Bullet, unlike many other films that he did, I think Lucas is the same
mm,
in that way. Like he's just a talented kid that it was very easy to root for him and very easy to kind of relate to him. He just felt like a kid you knew growing up in the neighborhood that you hung out with all the time. And that's so important. And I think it really it factors into Silver Bullet in a tremendous way.
and another thing that's awesome is the chemistry he has with his co-stars. So Megan Follows plays Jane, his sister. Again, another actor from Canada. I can't find any information about how she was cast in the film, and very rarely have I found anything where she talked about the film because I've listened to a bunch of Q&As that she did at different cons and such, and a lot of the stuff that people would want to talk about was essentially about her role as Anne in the Anne of Green Gables miniseries, the three different ones, and she like was the original actor who was in that played that part, and people love her for it. But she's gone on to have a quite a good career as well as as an actress and a director. She directs a bunch of films now as well. Um, so what I thought was really great was that you mentioned before about how in this film there's like it feels kind of real, like there's a good sense of that sense of community. I think really comes from how the actors bond with each other in this film because I think Megan and Corey in this movie as brother and sister are just fantastic. I think the dynamic between each other is really cool. At first, it kind of starts off, they're kind of like at each other's throats. But then it
Yeah.
becomes a really kind of sweet kind of thing where they were helping each other out. Jane is like the first person to kind of believe in her brother, even though she has every fiber of being saying not to because she's kind of pissed at him for something that happens at the start of
Yeah.
the film. But when they're on the same page together, it kind of becomes this like two-hander kid detective story, which I think is awesome. And in the fact that throughout the film their bond grows tighter is really cool to see. And I think it says something about the movie where even though there's this presence that comes to the town and the town kind of falls apart, there's vigilante mobs, the sheriff doesn't know what he's doing, all these things are happening. When it comes to them two, they're getting tighter throughout the film. I think that's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Another thing that I think really works in Silver Bullet is the suspense.
Hmm.
And the director builds it in a way, and I think I read that, he really wanted it to be perspective driven. And there's so many great shots in Silver Bullet where it's kind of from the monster's perspective, like him in the woods, and it's like a shaky cam, kind of handheld. I'm thinking directly of the scene when Marty's on the bridge letting off the fireworks,
Yeah.
and you have that music, and I can't recall who does the score, but it's not a great score, but it suits the film for that era, and it's kind of this do like this kind of like this impending doom, and there's a shot from the monster's perspective where he's kind of behind the trees, and you see Marty shooting up the fireworks, right? And for me, when I watch that scene, I can feel the fear
Hmm.
of as a kid. Like honestly, like I watch it, and I'm like, I feel like Marty would be more afraid, but why would he be? He has the silver bullet. He basically has like a motorcycle, right? He could just take off. I think of it in terms of, okay, one, I know this is a werewolf movie, but being on a bridge in the middle of the forest, shooting off fireworks by yourself, there's something creepy about that. There's something kind of spooky that even if it were you or me, like just imagine yourself, you, Matt, by yourself, standing at some bridge in the middle of the forest shooting off fireworks. There's nobody else around. There's something eerie about that. And then as you watch the movie, knowing that there's literally a werewolf watching you, and you see the shot where it's like, kind of behind the bushes, and then he switches perspective, and you can see the monster, the werewolf, kind of poking his head out, from behind the bushes. You just get a, and they only reveal him in glimpses until the very end, which I think is pretty awesome too. That's rare. And that to me is masterful suspense. You don't get that a lot in a lot of movies, especially horror movies today. They're so quick to get to the jump scare that they forget to let it build. And this is where Silver Bullet, I think, really excels, is in the suspense. The same thing for when Marty is chased and he ends up stuck in that bridge, and you see him looking through he crashes into the bridge, and the Reverend's chasing him in his car, and you just see that car pull up. And to me, I'm like, he's stuck. The Reverend's car pulls up. You see him get out and just walk. There's no like slow-mo shot. There's no like anything crazy. It's just a simple, like, you're watching him walk and you're like, oh my God, what is about to happen?
Right.
I think Silver Bullet just beautifully orchestrates the suspense of the situation in which they're in, be it from the cinematography, or just the simplicity of the actions, to the point that you're like, bro, I would be scared out of my mind in that situation.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. So you were talking before about the look of the werewolf. So a big conflict throughout the film was the werewolf, the costuming of it. So the person who did the design was this guy named Carlo Rambaldi. He actually did the design for E.T., in Spielberg's E.T. And he, being like an Italian, like supposedly he owed De Laurentiis a favor. And so he came onto the film with very little resources. So the story is that De Laurentiis said to Paramount, you give me 5 mil, I'll put up 5 mil, we'll make this for 10. And by a lot of people on the cast said, I don't know about De Laurentiis' 5 mil, but we did get it from Paramount. That's all we had to work with. So Rambaldi had really not much to work with. And so a big thing about the look of the werewolf was that Some people liked it, some people didn't. The director really didn't like it. And so he took a page out of Spielberg with Jaws. And so he's like, if Bruce the Shark isn't working, if their werewolf isn't like ready yet, we're going to do more kind of shots. And when you talk about the score, you can hear that John Williams kind of that dun, dun, that kind of thing coming up there.
Yeah, yeah, very much
You,
so. Yeah, yeah.
you can't hear it. And so that's what kind of happened there. So when Carlo Rambaldi finally kind of has the thing ready, there's like a big thing about how much it's going to show. De Laurentiis wanted more, Attias wanted less. And so they had to come to a compromise where the ending was going to be like a big kind of reveal, kind of how it kind of looked like. And also the funny thing was that supposedly they hired like a dancer to do the movements of the
Mm.
werewolf, and it just didn't work. And so they actually got McGill himself to go in the costume. Goes, you're going to play you're not only are you going to be the Reverend, but you're going to play the werewolf. So he's in the costume. So he has like dual roles essentially in the movie. He is playing the werewolf
I
in the
think
film,
that's
which I think is
awesome.
pretty cool.
That just
Yeah.
that adds so much to it. That's so great. I didn't know that, and I think that's amazing. I think that makes it so much cooler.
The cool thing about the movie is that while Adios was dealing with two leads as his actors, the biggest child on set was actually Gary Busey. I mean, he
Imagine
talks about
that.
imagine that. It was a really interesting movie. It's kind of like a comeback movie for him. So a lot of people maybe out there right now might know Gary Busey more for his more eccentricities than anything else. Like I don't know if you ever seen his TikTok. It's a wild ride, man. If you have,
Oh, is he on
um,
TikTok?
he is. He does his Buseyisms every day. He kind of presents stuff. He's looking very worse for
I
wear.
just got on TikTok, so I'm gonna have to go follow him now.
He's looking worse
Like
for
a
wear physically.
grown
Go ahead.
I'm like a grown idiot, like figuring out TikTok because I was like so against it for the longest time. But now like I'm getting ready to start selling my wares. It's like I need to be on whatever platforms I can to like push that stuff. And my son is on TikTok and he loves it. But I would love to see. I'm gonna have to follow Gary Busey because that would be. I could just only imagine what he has to offer.
I mean, he's looking worse for wear, but his spirit
Yeah,
and his energy is still very much alive.
he's definitely not looking great.
No,
But he's still Gary Busey. He's so
he
wild.
is.
Did you ever see him on The Apprentice? I don't know if you ever watched that.
Oh
It
yeah,
was
yeah.
man, just so there's some crazy. He's like he's such a personality. I love him. I love Gary Busey.
And he
He
was
works.
all the way back then as well. And what people don't understand was before Silver Bullet and such, he was actually an Oscar nominated actor. He got an Oscar nomination for playing Buddy Holly. And then drugs and a lot of things took over and he ballooned in weight. So with the Gary Busey, you kind of see in Silver Bullet, it's kind of different to what people were used to before that. But he's fantastic in the film. And so the thing about the script is that supposedly when it comes to a lot of Uncle Red's lines, Gary Busey was ad-libbing and just improvising. And so they actually went to Spielberg and they said, are you okay with this? And he said, yeah, he's awesome. Just let him do what he's going to do. So a lot of the things that he does in the movie, he's trying to do it himself. But at the same time, it took a lot of kind of like Dan Attias to kind of like, just try to contain that energy. Because I think one of the big reasons why he kind of got along with Corey Haim or why Corey Haim really loved him as well is because he's got that mischievous kind of spirit to him that shows up
It's
in
like
his films. Like you see it all the time. I mean, that's who you get with Gary Busey, right? And after this film will be like another era for him. Like Lethal Weapon will come out after that, and then um, Point Break, of course, which gave one of the great improvised lines I think in cinema history, which is Utah, give me two, with the meatball sandwiches. So,
Literally, my truck license plate, which I just gave to my son, but my truck because I live in Utah, so my it says Utah, and my license plate says "Give me two." So I've had people pull up to me next to me while I'm driving. They're like, "Is that from Point Break?" And I'd be like, "Yeah." They're like, "That's so awesome." That makes my day.
and so yeah, he's fantastic in the movie. I got to say, I really like what he does in this film as the older uncle because at one moment he's kind of dealing with his own crap, at the other moment he has to bring that immaturity aside and kind of take on the mantle of being like the one adult that these kids can actually confide with. Because as we find out in the film, the Reverend, isn't up to snuff. He's like the werewolf himself. Sorry to give away a spoiler about a 40-year movie, everyone. And
Yeah. Sorry, it
the
was out in '85 if you haven't caught up yet.
the sheriff, of course, he meets a grizzly end, and they pretty much every other adult's lost their mind, right? So
Yeah.
he's like, he has to be like the lone kind of like base. And I think as well, when it comes to moments in horror movies, the reaction that Uncle Red has when the werewolf kind of slams in and he does that scream at the thing, that was so good
Yeah,
because at
yeah.
one end it's kind of funny, but the other end it's kind of very just feels very authentic of what like a 45-year-old ex-alcoholic kind of guy hanging out with two kids might look like when a fucking bear werewolf kind of creature goes through
Yeah.
his cabin. I think it's a fantastic scene.
I love it. Yeah, the reaction. Because, up until that point, he's a skeptic literally until that wolf busts through the wall. He doesn't believe it until that happens, And I think that, that scene too, again, like the suspense, like they're in a house. It's just the three of them. They've got the silver bullet. And then it's all like the house is kind of remote, It's like it's not like necessarily in the woods, but it's kind of like off the grid a little bit. So you're vulnerable. And I think that the vulnerability of that, of the entire movie, you feel that, Maybe that kind of goes towards Marty's, being vulnerable in his condition, even though, he's adapted to it. But you feel vulnerable in every situation throughout that movie. When Jane is taking the bottles and she goes into the preacher's garage,
Yeah,
that's another situation where you're like, bro, even like if this guy wasn't a werewolf, that would be creepy and weird. You're just
yeah,
going into this creepy garage, and all of a sudden the guy's standing there, and he's like, "Hey, let me give you a ride home." It's like there's so many scenes like that in Silver Bullet that I think that is what makes it work so well. Is all of these situations that you could easily put yourself in and feel that kind of, dude, I would be freaking out. I would be freaking
yeah.
out. And yeah, Gary Busey as Red, he's Uncle Al in the novella and the book, and I don't know if maybe Al is his first name in the movie. I don't remember.
Mm.
But he adds so much to that role. Just the ad lib stuff that he brings to it, but the presence and what's great, as and you touched on this, is he kind of starts off as like this big kid. He almost feels sorry for Marty, but he doesn't want to show that he feels sorry for Marty. And then you see as the movie progresses, like he somehow, this drunken buffoon is now the voice of reason for these kids and is the skeptic. Whereas you would think he would be the one to be the first one. Yeah, man, it probably is a werewolf. But no, he's like, you guys are crazy. I'm tired of hearing this. It's just great. It's a great dynamic. And his relationship with those kids, if that didn't work, the movie wouldn't work. Red's relationship with them absolutely had to work in order for the movie to work, because if there was no chemistry there, it just wouldn't feel genuine.
The Matt's Movie Reviews podcast is brought to you by Amazon Prime Video. One of the best on-demand streaming services available, Amazon Prime Video features exclusive Amazon originals as well as popular movies and TV shows. Watch Amazon Prime Video anytime, anywhere.
I want to talk about something that I picked up just as a reminder of watching this movie and watching movies during that time in the 80s, which really had an impact on me as a kid. Now, I'm not a car guy, but I love movie vehicles, like vehicles in movies or cartoons and stuff. And it was something about the 80s where it was essential, I think, that to be a really cool character, you had to have a cool car or bike or something. So we're talking about the Silver Bullet, the bike, wheelchair bike thing itself, which was created by just trying to find the name here, Michael McCracken was one of the special effects supervisors on this thing. So supposedly he's the one, according to director Dan Attias. I was listening to a podcast he did recently, and he talked about that he was the one that made kind of like the vehicle itself. And he loved, and the director was saying it had like this sexy kind of sleek design, the color and everything on it just looked awesome. But I'm thinking about other films around that time. Just look at '85 itself. You have the DeLorean with Back to the Future. Not long after this film, the Wraith came out, and I remember that film with
Hey,
Charlie Sheen
yep,
had the cool cars in
obviously,
that
yeah.
one. Then around that time, Mad Max with the last V8s that Mel Gibson was driving around in. I
Oh
mean, it was
yeah.
something about this time where I think vehicles was like such a pivotal, pivotal part of a character to really bring about that cool kind of badassness in there. Do you kind of find that as well, looking back, think about those 80s movies?
Yeah, I mean, Smokey and the Bandit. You look at Dukes of Hazzard. I grew up on Dukes of Hazzard as a kid. In the '80s. Like
Knight
that was my
Rider,
which what was that?
Knight Rider.
Oh yeah, Knight Rider, of course, Knight Rider. There was Street Hawk.
Hmm.
I don't know if you remember that one with the motorcycle.
I
So not
do,
a car.
yeah.
But yeah,
Um,
everything was
yeah,
vehicle oriented. Airwolf. You had everything that
yeah,
was
well,
always like this, badass vehicle that was kind of side by side designed with the protagonist.
yeah,
I miss that. I
yeah,
wish they'd bring it back. I know, John Wick had the Mustang, but then, he kind of dipped in and out of vehicles. He was more about the guns than the cars.
yeah.
But yeah, I miss that. I really do. I miss that where a car was as much a character as the protagonist. And yeah, this and like I was saying, like the Silver Bullet, I just remember as a kid, I remember my dad showed me the movie because he'd already seen it. My dad he would always kind of curate to a degree.
Mm,
Risky Business is another one. The Porsche 928S. Like I
right.
loved that car so much. I was like, this is amazing. But yeah, my dad kind of set it up and he was like, oh man, wait till you see this motorcycle that they make out of his wheelchair. And I remember we saw it and we was like, I remember just being envious. Like I was like, I want that thing. Like I want a Silver Bullet. Like that's awesome. And it was just cool, stuff like that is great. I think we need more vehicles with protagonists.
Yes.
That should be the new mandate.
And there have to be something that's unique as well, because I mean, the only thing I can think of these days where they have kind of like the vehicle with the protagonist is like maybe the Fast and the Furious movies, but those kind of got really, really silly at the end. But a lot
Yeah,
of the
and
stuff
fairly
that they have,
interchangeable. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the stuff that they have now just seems like very kind of like a Tesla prototype, very kind of sleek looking, kind of like plane kind of things.
Yeah.
Where a lot
Yeah.
of the stuff we're talking about, like you said, it matched the character, but it matched the tone of the movie too. Like something like the Ecto One in Ghostbusters as well, kind of like this hearse that they transform into this kind of like the sirens and all that stuff. I freaking love that, or the way that they did talk about vehicles. I got the '89 Batmobile as well from like way back when. Even the way they did that in the new Batman movie, I think it's just really cool. And a lot of things now just seems really bland the way they kind of design things as well. That's the other thing that's kind of missing: the design, the colors. The Silver Bullet, like of course it's called the Silver Bullet, but it had like that kind of a bit of a red to a bit of like orange
Red,
to it, that
red
sunburst kind of
accent.
thing. It was just fantastic. And yeah, I'm the same. Like those are, I'd ride around on my bicycle pretending. Like you talk about the Silverhawk series, I'll be like counting down from 10, and then when I hit one, I'm freaking just going off, as it was. So yeah, definitely we need to bring that back too. And the other
Yeah,
thing
that would
that
be
really, go ahead.
no, I would agree with you. That would be awesome. That would be great.
And the other thing that's really essential, I think, werewolf movies in the 80s especially. I mean, Silver Bullet was kind of like in the middle of the pack, in pun included, of all these kind of things, because you had American Werewolf, Howling, you have this movie. You also have Teen Wolf comes out the same year as well. You also have
Mm.
the Company of Wolves that comes out the year after, Wolfen. All these great kind of werewolf movies coming out here as well. And I think, especially in regards to special effects, practical makeup effects, all of the stuff that a lot of these guys who worked in these movies, like the Rick Bakers or the Rob Botons or what have you, the work they kind of do in these movies, I think really kind of propelled forward the type of creature feature effects that we'll see really hit a certain pinnacle before CGI kind of took over that stuff. I think that stuff was pretty cool too.
It's such a loss. I mean, the last time I can remember a practical werewolf was Neil Marshall's Dog Soldiers, unless I'm missing one. I mean,
There's a
you look
movie
at something
that
like
came out last year was called Werewolves. Um, that's available now on Netflix, and I actually quite
I've
like it.
heard of it, but I haven't watched it. Yeah.
Stars Frank Grillo. Watch that because it's actually got
Okay.
some pretty cool. It's like a mix, but a lot of it is practical, with like a little splashes of CGI stuff. But there's actually
Mm.
quite a lot of creature feature, old school practical stuff in that movie. And if you like werewolf movies and you like that kind of filmmaking, I recommend checking out Werewolves. It's pretty cool.
I'll give it a look because I have seen it listed on Netflix and I haven't watched it and I have heard of it, but yeah, it's just I feel like I don't know if it's because of guys like us, we're just nostalgic from an era that no longer exists, and that's probably plays a tremendous part of it. But the lack of practical effects just doesn't seem right, to be honest with you. And I get the reliance on CGI. It's cheaper, it's faster. But I feel like things would still be cheaper and faster on a practical level too. Like we've advanced enough that I feel like you could still do practical stuff on a pretty decent sized budget. And I just wish there was more of it.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes you can say, well, it looks kind of fake. And I'm like, It does, but it doesn't." And I think you know what I'm talking about when I say that is that, you see those things and it's like, okay, you know that it's not real, but it still feels more real and visceral because there is a disconnect with CGI. No matter how good CGI has gotten, you can watch Avatar and be marveled and dazzled at every frame, but you still know it's fake. You
Hmm.
still know that it's CGI. I'm not saying that it blares out that it's CGI, it's that you know it in your head. And I feel like when you know, even when it's practical, you're like, that's real. That happened for real. You know what I'm saying? Like, I feel like that adds something to it. And I follow a couple accounts on Instagram that do special effects. And I'm trying to remember the name, but I can't. But trust me, they're out there. And these guys do amazing stuff every day. They post stuff, and I'm just like, that is awesome. Like that is amazing. And it's also you could argue the point like, well, maybe practical has gotten so advanced that you can do it and blend it with CGI so that you don't really notice.
Yeah.
I'd like for it to stand out though. And I think any criticism that somebody has about the wolf in Silver Bullet, it's fair. I happen to love it. Yes, it looks like a bear, dog, wolf creature, but to me, like that's a werewolf, you know? I love the D transition at the end,
Yes.
uh, where it's simple. And you know what it reminds me of is, and I'm not even 100% sure how they did it, although I'm fairly certain, where they have the hair pulling back. I mean, that's a very simple thing to do, right? Like you just have like a skin shell and you have hair that's already plucked through it, and then you're just pulling that hair back.
Mm.
Such a simple effect, but so effective. And you get it. You're like, oh wow, And even the CGI that they used in Silver Bullet, where his face is kind of, going back, I'm like, I'm convinced, I'm in, I'm good. Like I'm not like, oh, that's dumb. I'm like, man, that's freaky, right? And then both of his eyes are out. Like that's pretty awesome. And you don't get that a lot. But what it reminds me of is that another Stephen King adaptation, which might actually be my favorite, is Christine,
Mm.
where John Carpenter shot. So you see the vehicle fixing itself, Christine fixing herself, and just kind of like expanding and becoming perfect again. They shot it all in reverse, and then they rolled the film back, and it looks phenomenal. Go back and watch Christine. It's in 4K. It looks amazing. It sounds amazing. And I'm telling you, every scene where Christine puts herself back together because of the simplicity of the practical effects, which was they basically had a hydraulics thing that smushed the car and then they just shot it and then rolled it backwards. It's
Yeah.
amazing. And Silver Bullet does some very similar simple effects. It's a shot of an eye. It's a shot of a face. Just as you said, trying to take the Bruce Jaws approach. It works. It
Yeah.
works in
And I think the biggest effect scene in that movie is the dream that the Reverend has,
yeah.
which
Yeah,
is
yeah.
it's such an interesting standout movie because there's a reality based kind of component to the film where you're following this brother sister duo, this family, it's small town America, and then this scene pops up where it's like almost it's a surreal kind of nightmare where the Reverend's talking to his congregation and they're all transforming in front of
Yeah.
our eyes. And supposedly, from what I read in the research was that so the first few pews was all makeup kind of stuff. The next few behind them, little bits here and there, and way back in the outside of the shot, cutouts of people. So it wasn't like real people in the back, but you're focused so much on the shots, the framing of the people at the front and the
Vader.
transformations, which I think were just fantastic in that scene. And kind of like and then the fire and everything else and the madness and chaos that comes from that. You don't see that stuff in the background, but that's the kind of stuff you're kind of talking about where you're taking this really kind of like realistic approach to it. And the thing I love about practical as well is that there's a weight to it as well. where you don't
Mhm.
get sometimes where if it's just a full CGI creation. It's like my favorite action film of all time is The Matrix, and the effects of that are great. But sometimes there are shots in the film watching now as opposed to where our eyes were back in 1999, where our perceptions were, where you could see the weightlessness of some of the kind of movements towards it. You could tell it's just like ones and zeros doing their thing there. Where in a
Sure.
movie like Silver Bullet or Werewolf in London or what have you, there's a weight to the thing. You can see the muscles, the tendons, the bone, mix that in with the sound effects and all that stuff. It just works so well. And my approach, I think the best approach, having talked to and you're the same. We talked to tons of filmmakers over the years, and I always ask about practical effects and such. I think the best approach is that it's kind of like a cake. The base, the ingredients, the structure, the size, that's the practical. The CGI is the cream on top. It's the garnish,
Yeah.
it's the sprinkles. That's the kind of the stuff that you CGI, and just give it a little extra
Mm.
something to kind of maybe to blend in stuff or maybe to add a certain color aspect or what have you. That's where that kind of stuff works. Because there's
I
nothing
like that
worse than
analogy.
yeah,
I think that's a great analogy for it, like the cake with the frog. I think that's actually a very effective explanation of what the proper use of practical would be today. And I do think a lot of filmmakers do aim for that.
yeah,
Sometimes I think it's very easy and inexpensive by today's standards to say, fuck it, just we'll CGI it, you know?
yeah,
But I think that when you come from the approach of, well, let's do as absolutely much as possible in camera, that I appreciate. And I get it. Like, look, you and I are given, hey, you're given a budget and a camera and a crew, go shoot this movie. In the course of it, you're going to find yourself compromising at times.
mm,
And I think that, the main thing that you would want to, at least I think, as a filmmaker, I would want to, stay true to my guns, stay true to the vision that I have, because it's so easy to compromise. It's so easy to say, nah, fuck it. We're not gonna be able to get it. We're not gonna be able to do this. We're not gonna be able to do that. But you guys solve those problems as early as possible. It's funny, like all the movie sets I've been on. I think about this all the time. Is the crew, like the crew is a unique personality of any show.
mm,
And I would see like a lot of times they have like pins and buttons and stuff like their personality. And one of the things I would always see is it's like a camera or some other like film type icon, and it would be like a sticker or a pin, and it would say "Fix it now." And I think that, that's a very common thing with a lot of like crew and technical film people is, they want that too. They don't want CGI to do their jobs. They want to do their jobs, and they want to do it right. They want to do it well, and they want to see that work from the ground level, not a computer doing it for them. So I think there's an appreciation and a hunger for that. So, you look back at like Silver Bullet, it's kind of like you get to appreciate something where they didn't have a big option to just say, hey, we'll just CGI it. They're
yeah.
like, we could have figured this out. For all intents and purposes, they had Bruce the werewolf.
Mm. So you had this budget estimated around seven. So box office wise, it doesn't do so well in America. I think it only did like five. Worldwide, it did like 12. This was definitely a movie though that found its audience later. Cable,
Yeah.
VHS. There was Shout Factory, I think, did like a 35th anniversary thing maybe several years ago. Blu-ray kind of release as well. And watching it again, I think like for me, this is a kind of film that like my son's getting older. He's turning 13 this year. He's getting more. He wants to watch more kind of like horror stuff. So I'm kind of like thinking to myself, okay, we can maybe do this and do that. I'm thinking Silver Bullet could be potential one. Maybe it's like 14 or 15 or something like that to watch this movie because I think it's like one of those films that kind of works with his wavelength. I think
Sure.
the stuff that he likes, and I think it's a movie that with all the kind of any foibles we're talking about with a film, with any type of creature stuff, whatever. Yes, the performances, the film, the choices of the filmmaking, the story. I mean, we're talking about Stephen King here, master of horror, right? I think it all works. It still works really well.
Yes.
It's a great film to watch, and I just think it was fantastic to watch it again after all these years. And to think that 40 years later, it's still a movie that has still has has teeth to it, and can really kind of people are talking about it. I think it's a great thing. It really is. And I got to say, Paul, it's been a pleasure to talk to you about it today because I know, I remember reading something on Joe Blow about how you were talking about you have an article about what's your favorite horror movie. So it's a pleasure to talk to you today about it because I think more people need to see this film, and if they can, it'll be awesome. It's kind of hard to find in streaming here in Australia, but I think in the US, probably in Shutter or something might have it. And if it does,
Shutter,
yeah,
iTunes.
it's
You
a
can get
must
it.
watch for Halloween.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty inexpensive too. I think it's like it can't be more than $10. I would be shocked. Um, yeah, it's pretty easy to track down here in the States. And I agree with you, man. Like I think this is one of those, it's like so many movies, and it's another testament to just kind of the beauty of film in general is how it unravels over time. The movies that hinging every opinion on the box office success or failure of a film is the biggest mistake so many people make.
Mm,
I remember I had a when I was in film school, my teacher, we used to go in and we'd go in Monday morning after the weekend, and we were, all of us students, we were obsessed with, every movie that came out. We went and saw the movie, and remember we would come in like, oh man, did you see such and such made X amount of dollars this weekend? And I remember he was so dismissive, and it would piss me off. He'd be like, you guys think too much about box office. And I was like, how could you not think about box office, man? But like, he was right, sure, the box office is great for the people whose bottom line it matters to, but to you and me, to the viewer, those are numbers that don't mean shit to us.
mm,
And the people that hinge their viewing on a score that's either rotten or fresh, I think that's another mistake too. You go look at some of these older films and the ratings that they have on that abysmal site.
mm.
Uh, it just does not measure up in any way, shape, or form. So I think Silver Bullet is a bona fide classic in my book, and I hope that people rediscover it. It's the spooky season. It's Halloween. I mean, there's some good werewolf movies out there. In my opinion, Silver Bullet's the best. I know American Werewolf in London people would, crucify me for it, but go ahead, get your hammer and nails because for me, it's Silver Bullet.
For me, when it comes to if you just stick it to the 80s context, it for me goes American Werewolf, Silver Bullet, right underneath that. I know some people might say Howling. I like Howling too, but for me, Silver Bullet kind of just goes over how I think Howling might have the better kind of for like a gore kind of like horror aspect, have more of that stuff going on for it.
I think
But
the
I
Joker
think as
brigade. Yeah.
yeah, I think as an overall film performance, all that kind of stuff, Silver Bullet to me comes in at just there, really up there as one of the better werewolf movies. And yeah, hopefully maybe in the future, vehicles and werewolves become great again because it was a pleasure watching this movie and seeing both in good fashion there, being represented properly in this 1985 classic. So everyone out there listening, Silver Bullet, highly recommended by myself and Paul Shirey, my guest today. Make sure you check out the Midmen podcast, check out the Arctic Ninja Substack. I'm going to have all links to Paul's stuff in the show notes, and also a link for people to want to check out Silver Bullet over at Amazon as well. And Paul Shirey, thank you so very much for your time today. It's a pleasure to be able to talk to you again, and hopefully we can talk again in the future. It's always great to hear.
Always a pleasure, Matthew. Thank you so much for having me. It was great to talk some Silver Bullet.
Thank you for watching the Matt's Movie Reviews channel. Please subscribe for more reviews, podcast interviews, and exclusive content.